I can put it in there automatically.
Oh, yes. And automatically we show up like this. It's funny. There's a little delay on my screen there, and I was like, oh, and a delay on my other screen, and a delay getting up this morning. I think it's a theme. Mondays are a day for rest. Moon days. I know Flea normally we're like moon days. We just need to just rest. We were talking about that before. And I'm like, oh,
Patience was the only major arcana in the deck today. So, yeah, patience, balance, needing to surrender to self. So, like Mondays being that day that we shouldn't actually work, it should actually be our day of rest. The Gregorian calendar actually threw off our balance and by actually making our work week start on a Monday. So, a little bit of information there.
yeah, I know a lot of people dread Mondays because, well, we're at Easter holidays now. People are having a break. But if you're not having a break, many people will be like, oh gosh, I've got to go to work and get this done and do the grind. And it's like, how do we shift out of that? And I know some things that we listen to is like Motivational Monday, let's get excited. But if your body is feeling the resistance, it's like questioning why. You know, I had a little moment before with Flea. I'm like, oh, my body's still aches, but once I'm up, I'm okay. And I know why. I'm pregnant and my body's changing and I'm not sleeping on the correct angles and things. And other times it's a little bit of maybe anxiety or things that are going through you. I know when I was making the decision to leave a career after 17 years, I didn't want to get up. And about 3 years ago, around this time, I just finished my advanced breathwork training. I'd gone through a lot of shifts. I was starting to look for other things. And then when school hit back, there was like an F no. And then I just was like, I can't. I remember talking to Flea and Sean, and I just went to the doctor, and then I found every excuse under the sun not to go back for the first 2 weeks, to blame mental health, to find all the reasons why, but that resistance was so real. And I remember being in the car, like crying to Flea. I felt like the kid that didn't want to go to school, that school refusal where you see them kicking and screaming with their parents. I was that kid in my own car, and I didn't want to get out. And I was like, whoa, my body just does not want to do this anymore. I know you've had the moments like that of those resistance pieces, Flea.
Oh, 100%. Yes. If more so now, just being like forcing myself to go into environments that I know don't feel right. And it's funny that it's not funny, it's synchronous and it's meant to be exactly that. But the cards that came out, like I said, there was temperance or the balance card there, and this idea of patience and like opening ourselves up to what our foundation actually needs. But down the other side was all the mental cards. So this is all to do with like what's going on in our heads. And a lot of the time it's just that reoccurring thought, like why do we go into this slump on specific days or when we have to go into specific areas? And it's the mental, it's the draining constant battle of pretending to be something that you're not, and sitting with that, like the wisdom of knowing that there's different and there's better, but then not being able to trust, not even trust our foundation, but move into what you know is right. And it's scary, that idea of change, like landing in the I've got to do what's right for me, but it's going to hurt other people or it's going to create some type of a disruption that I'm not really sure how it's going to land and how it's going to pan out in the end. Like it could be worse. And that fear, that's draining. And a lot of the time, like I know that we both had this when it came to going into schools, it was like, I just can't be in there anymore. For me, it was, I couldn't pretend that what I was teaching was right. It's like when we follow the curriculum to the T, and I'm very much a stickler for the rules. So if I'm told to do something in a job, then I do that. And I hate when it then conflicts with, this doesn't feel right in my body. And a lot of the things that we're being taught, it's like, why are we teaching this? Like, what is the point and the purpose? Why does it have to be done this way? And if everything's inclusive, which you just need to go and look at the language in the definition there, and you'll see that inclusivity isn't actually what we're led to believe it to be. It's the conforming into one safe role, so to belong in one category. And nobody is that. Nobody's meant to fit into one box or one mold. Like, we break those molds daily, and in the classroom it's like, oh, we're being inclusive. It's like, but how are we actually providing the equity that is needed for each individual person to be the individual person? Yeah, they're all included in the school. Yeah, they can all put the school uniform on and they can all behave in, the same rules and the same structure, but that structure doesn't allow for the unity of self. And that
Mm.
really played havoc on my emotional capability, because I was like, I didn't fit into the molds. The teachers didn't pick up my trauma. They didn't pick up like the areas where I was lacking, and I was punished. I think I mentioned on one of our podcasts before, when it came to science, I spent most of my science lesson in the hallway doing the homework from the night before because I didn't understand it. It wasn't that I didn't do my homework or that I was, being a problem child or anything like that. I just didn't understand the actual lesson, because a lot of what was taught in the classroom. And if you were doing your homework out in the hall, then you missed what happened in that class during that day. And then you were expected to go home and do your revision and complete this homework. And it's like, but I didn't get that lesson. And that was like 2 years of me thinking that I was dumb, that I didn't understand science, that I was never ever going to be in those fields of work, because of that structure of, well, you didn't do your work, without the inquiry, without the going in and discovering, well, why isn't she doing her homework? Every single day she's in the hallway. There must be something wrong. And we're taught a little bit more now how to deal with that. But so many times, like, I know when it comes to trauma, it then gets fobbed off to someone else. And so many of the young people that were in my field were like, I just want to talk to you, miss. You feel like the safe person. You understand me. But because of my training as just a basic teacher, I wasn't allowed to. It's like, oh no, we have to go talk to the counsellor. I don't like her, miss. I don't like him. I don't like the way he is. He creeps me out. And it's like, well, why aren't we listening to that? And then
Mm.
making the assessment based, like, well, who do they actually feel safe with? In ancient times, communities used to have like family members. There'd be someone there that you could go to, whether it be an aunt or like an uncle, a cousin, or someone that was close to you, that you knew that you had a bond with, and you felt safe to express the things that maybe you couldn't tell mum or dad, maybe you
Mm.
couldn't tell grandma or granddad. And that is needed so badly, is these safe spaces and safe people that we can talk to without trying to fix, without trying to do for them or to make the shifts, to just give them the space to feel safe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You brought me back to memories of when I was teaching in my earlier days as well. Being a dance drama teacher, the rooms were different, and I was very blessed to be teaching in spaces where I could create my own space and safety and have the freedom, because they'd have couches and rostra blocks and cool props and things, and kids would just want to come down and help, or rehearsals. And you reminded me of actually quite a few students that would come down because they felt safe in this space, and there was places for them to actually rest as well, because maybe they didn't get the sleep the night before because of fighting at home. And I was talking to a friend yesterday who's a doctor, and it's hard being in that world of having to report things and the industry side of things and the safety side. And she's also in the world of coming into the holistic medicine, and she's gifted in both sides. But it's hard, I think, when you have that piece of paper that says you're a safe person, have gone through all the training, to actually provide that when you see these moments come up in society. And you made me think about the counselors that we had. I would just constantly, talk to them, keep the communications open. I'd, let the kids come in and if I was around, pottering around, just doing something or making something or, preparing things in the space, I'd let them in with a friend or whatever. But just noticing and letting them know, I am gonna let the guidance counselor know that you're here, you're not having a good day. And I think that there was this beautiful flexibility of just keeping the communication lines open and letting them know, and they still felt safe to be in those spaces. And they would open up and tell me all kinds of things. And I'm sure you felt that, Flea, too. And like with the teacher hat on, part of our duty of care is to report that and share that, because it can be possibly used as evidence for future things if needed. And I've had to report things because of what has been shared in those spaces, that then the counsellors and other people have had to then note, amongst other things. And they would still share that. And knowing that I would have to report what I've heard as a teacher, and just to make sure that they're in the most safest position ever. But yeah, it's interesting. I know we were going to talk about something different, but these foundations again of safety, not only in your own body, but when you create that safety within yourself, you start to see the ripple effects around you. And we've lived unsafety, we've lived the insecurities. We know what it's like, and this is why we've done the work that we've done, to notice these structures and systems and to create those solid foundations internally, so that as creative beings, as the people that are you do have control of your life. Even though you may feel out of control, you can just take those tiny little baby steps to notice, to shift, to change, and then you see the external change, the relationships change. And these foundational pieces do take time. However, when you surround yourself with the right people, mentors, uh, others that have the best interests, the bonds that Flea was talking about, whether it's family or tribe or soul brothers and sisters or good friends, there's so many names we can call it. When you start surrounding yourself with those people that uplift you instead of pulling you down, you start to see those foundations change, which probably links to the card that you had up before.
Yeah, that's one of those mentality cards, the wisdom card, but wisdom in rest and rejuvenation. And it's not rest as in, oh, I'm going to sleep. Yes, we do need that. It's the recognizing the patterns. And a lot of what we were talking about, so in schools, we learn this. From our families, we sometimes learn that we're not safe. And I know for me in particular, like when it was reported that we were in an unsafe environment, we were put into foster care. Foster care was actually more unsafe than being at home. And this is the systems that are out there that says, oh, okay, well, no, this is the right way to do things. And I'm not saying that all people out there are abusive and that are in the system, but where is the listening to the individual, actually checking in with them, like, are you safe in this environment? Is this, what you actually need to feel safe? Because that idea of safety follows us. It follows us when we stay in jobs that aren't serving us anymore, or in relationships that aren't serving us anymore. It's this codependency on life that we learn from the structures that we start in. And a lot of this does come down to what I posted yesterday about silent leadership. We've got this dictatorship that says, the hierarchy of things. So we've got to go to the principal, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. What if they're not safe up the top? Who's
Mm.
actually checking and ensuring that those people are the right people in the job? Like, where are the reviews on our systems that we're meant to follow that continue to allow us to be in that safety? This is where we start to we have to recognize within ourselves, and that rest and rejuvenation comes in, that okay, this is not right for me, and it's okay that it's right for somebody else, because for other people it would be.
Mm.
It's listening and understanding and putting yourself into positions where you do feel safe. It's like recognizing those people, and sometimes we do just need to be surrounded by people that understand that and know that there is no judgment, that there is no agenda to their friendship. It's a hard one to really recognize, but it does take a certain amount of one support. So, choosing the right environments to be supportive of, the right type of practices for you that may help you to recognize your own patterns and shift your trajectory. So, that's the rest and rejuvenate. So, like when I pull back the rest, I'm pulling back into my own, back into soul alignment. What's going to bring me back into my heart space, into what it is
Mm.
I know is right for me. And then the pausing and thinking of that, because every single thing in this world has it's a double-edged sword. That was the other one that followed. Um, this is success, but it's also recognize, okay, there is still going to be the evil in the world. And if we spend all of our mentality and all of our time thinking on the evil of the world, that's all we notice. And in that constant thinking, we have to shift. And that's the rejuvenation, the reinventing, the restructuring of our brains to go, okay, well, if I'm constantly thinking of this negative thing, if I'm constantly thinking everyone's evil, and we spoke a little bit about this yesterday, we form the patterns that anyone that looks a certain way is going to be deceptive. Anyone from a certain culture is going to be, out to get us, or whatever the story is. But the story is our foundation. And when we come back to that, it's like, okay, well, I know my foundation was rocky. I don't understand a lot of the natural things that come with being in a safe environment. So I've had to work through the fight and fight to go, okay, well, what feels right for me? When can I let that down? And when can I recognize that actually I might be looking at my patterns from childhood, from not being safe, and applying it where it doesn't need to fit? And I hope that makes sense, because in my head it does. It's like, when we're going back and forth, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a lot of strain on our body.
And it's going back and forth because you're on this tight wire rope balancing, and you talked about it takes time to know within, and the discernment of noticing the resistance, the uncomfortability, and your own safety mechanisms. And then on the other side, when you do get to know that part of yourself and you decide to take risks that are going to stretch you into the unknown, this is where that leap of faith comes in. And that fear of the unknown, of doing something that you've never done before because you're not used to it, but something is pulling you forward to do it, or you're thinking into it. This is the fine line, that discernment in your heart space, not from here, to go and jump and leap and flee. You spoke about this yesterday about excitement and fear, because in the brain, excitement, anxiety, fear, it recognizes it as the same thing. And it's shifting that internal narrative, those internal foundations, so that when you start to really shift, like, I want this type of lifestyle or job, or to attract this partner, or whatever it is you desire, trusting yourself to then take those risks into the things that are unknown, to trust yourself and to trust the situations. That's the next level that gets to be exciting. and not fearful and scary to keep you unstuck. Because if you're knowing all the same things, you're going to stay in the same places or the same people. So to step outside that box, like the Matrix, right? You got to do something a little bit scary that we think is fearful. This is the other frame of those things. And just keep trusting in here because something's going to keep pulling you forward to say yes to something that is scary but healthy and exciting. And there's a difference, and you'll feel it in here. But so many of us have like protected this because of that safety thing. We don't know how to open and feel the subtleties. Because when you do, this is where magic happens and where beautiful people start coming in, and you know, yes, there is evil and there's horrible things and there's negative things in the world that people do to each other that we are aware of. But on the other spectrum, there is such beauty and just gorgeous life and lusciousness and kindness and compassion. And we get to choose where we're going to put our attention and our focus on. We can still be aware of those things, but you're going to put your energy and let that drain you and do that. Or we can be aware and meet it with neutrality and go, I'm choosing different. I see that, but I'm going to choose kindness. I'm going to choose to lead this way. And Flea talked about this self-led leadership in you get to lead and be the king, the queen of your own life. And you got to choose it. And it's not easy. The ease, grace, and flow, when people talk about ease, grace, and flow, yes, that does come. But that doesn't mean effort isn't an experience, isn't part of the journey. Flea asked a question like, where's the mud? You know, how to get unstuck out of the mud that's keeping us in these frameworks. And it's like, I don't know, and then originally I was like, I still keep slipping over the surface. There's just like surface area, you know, like slipping and falling. And I feel like sometimes life is like that, or sometimes you put your foot in and get stuck and it's hard to get out. We just got to clean it up. So you got to clean it up in here. And it can take time and it can be fast at some point. Some things can happen really quickly and other things might take time because maybe there's something else exciting that's being crafted for you that you've designed. And the patience, I love that patience card because I am impatient. I'm a manifesting generators are. I want things now and I want it to happen now. You know, because I do usually work really fast and I get results, you know, anything that I create. Sometimes it's like, you know what, just sit and relax. You've designed this grand plan of your life, whether you're aware of it or not, to learn the lessons. And the beauty is we get to choose the different pathways. That there could be many, but they all lead to the one. And it's that reminder of actually the power of our free will and and of the divine. So it's interesting when, you know, when you were talking, Flea, I was thinking about that part with the fear, but the excitement, the discernment, but also like noticing the patterns in our surroundings, in the systems. And this is not to put any judgment on any of those systems. Like, I love people, I love culture, I love the diversity of life and the insights. But there are some things like that I notice, and we had a chat yesterday, that's still like, I feel the resistance in bigger systems, and we're talking about religion. And there's lots of beauty in religion and in the scriptures, but there's also stuff that's being tainted and lost and manipulated. Again, it's discernment in the now, not when it was wherever it was created. The words, the ideas, the wisdom, the insights are all up for interpretation, I believe. And so, yeah, when I look at some of these bigger systems, Flea was talking about education from the top down. when we look at bigger systems that frame society, could we have more discussions and could we question more deeply and have really robust conversations and insights to share perspective and not make other people wrong and just listen, because maybe it does change your perspective, but there is a trap, that we get stuck in it, and Flea spoke about in like the grind of the school life, but then and we've been talking about this whole week on like shifting those patterns. But when you start putting, I feel like it's a hard thing. Again, it's a discernment, like too much faith in one thing.
Mm.
And it's like, you've got to come back to in here to know what feels good for you and to keep questioning with curiosity. Because some of these bigger systems, it's just like, well, what is it that you are actually wanting control over?
Mm.
So it's interesting.
And I feel like, to add on to that, like what you're talking about, the balance in the patience card, you can kind of see like one hand down, one hand up. It's like, what are you willing to receive in the intellectual world, the structural world, and how are you going to interpret that to then move into your emotional chart, which is your heart? So when we're looking at our heart space, this is our cups. This is how we feel fulfilled. And funnily enough, discontent and boredom ends up in that emotional category, just as being loved and fulfilled. So, like both being green, both those emotions, both the negative and positive, are always going to be present. But when we can reflect on the negative, like what is draining you, what is stagnant in your life, that feeling stuck in the mud or sometimes like slipping all over the place, like I love to teach. I love being around kids. Like I wanted to be a mum. That was my major goal, is I could grow up and I can just be one of those soccer mums that gets to go to, all the after school sports and interact with the other mums. Like that was my ideal. It was like, yes, that's what I want to be. And then the structure said, no, you've got to be more. You've got to want more. You need a career. You need to support yourself and, not depend on a man. And it's like, well, why? What's the point in having two genders and cross merging them if it's not to utilize the strengths of each other, to utilize and come together in that balance of, okay, well, where do we support one another in our growth? Where do we create that balance within the system? And so, it threw me off. For the longest time, it's like, well, I've got to follow what the teacher says. We're told that they're the best. We're told to follow them. And it's like, why? Why are we told to follow these people when it goes against our heart? It goes against what we know to be true. And this is the model of leadership that is everywhere. And it has tainted religion, because we look to the Pope and to the priests, and they're the better ones. But yet in the media, we're shown that they're not all better. They're not all good. And a lot of religions have been altered and transformed, whether it be for a king or for the actual denomination. Like these are the things that we see. And it's like, okay, so we can't really trust. So straight away, we've got a foundation, we've got a structure that isn't supportive of on all three sides. It's not emotionally capable. It's not logically sound. So therefore that structure, that triangle that is us, is not there. And the minute one of those edges is a little bit off center, we then start to, go into our the different triangles, the off balance ones and things like that. We don't have the degree. And once again, there's the science and the maths and all things that I missed because I was in a hallway. The language, I understand it. I understand the angles and I understand the trajectory, but trying to explain it is one thing. When I teach to look at the heart, to look at the things and question the things, to find other ways. Because I know for me, I had to find other ways because I didn't want to be labeled as the dumb kid. I didn't want to, fall behind my peers. So whatever I didn't understand in class, I went home and I did my best to try and work out and to try and find a way to understand it that most people weren't teaching. It's like, oh, maths has to be this way, this way. That doesn't make sense in my brain. It's like if I do something, it's like, oh, I can see the columns, I can see the patterns. That makes sense for me. Trying to teach that where it's one structure, it's like, hang on a sec, no, it can be different ways. And I go back to teaching because this is something I love, and yet the system has made it out of balance for me. It made it drained, like I felt drained and disconnected, and it wasn't filling my cup in the way that it should be because it wasn't mirroring what true teaching is, which is to open up the inquiry within another to then look at potential and possibility. When we look at mathematics, why is it formed? So we can build, so we can grow, so we can be economically stable and we can understand the ways of the world. Yet we don't teach maths in that way. It's like, oh, well, no, look at the structure and it has to look like this. And if it doesn't look like that, you're wrong. Well, no, they're not. If the answer or the outcome is right for them or right in the scheme of things, who's to say that their method of working it out is right or wrong? I've spent many times talking to other people about like how we swallow a pill. Like, do you need a cup? Do you drink from a bottle? That simple movement of swallowing a tablet, every single person does differently. Do they put it in behind their tongue, on top of their tongue? Do you need the water in your mouth first? Can you swallow it without any water? The way that we talk is the same thing. The tongue and the movements of our mouth is very different, and yet we talk and teach with phonics. Oh, it has to be done this way, and this is how you sound it out and you can learn to spell. Well, if you're sounding out something that isn't pronounced correctly, how are you meant to spell it correctly? And a lot of like kids, like even the word, like, where do we go to eat, Marie? We go out to a
Restaurant.
So correct pronunciation, it's actually got an AU in there, restaurant. It's a
Oh,
French
yeah.
word and it has syllables. Now, as a teacher, when I go to read that word out, oh yeah, restaurant. You go to this place to eat and everyone's like, restaurant. How
Yeah,
are they
yeah.
ever going to learn the phonics if the pronunciation is incorrect? And then we go to different countries where
And
the
accents.
English is even more broken.
It was very Aussie of me. Restaurant. It was very.
That's
It's a thing.
It's a thing. And these are the foundations that we're teaching from, and we're wondering why kids are disconnected, kids feel worthless. They then go, oh, well, there's no hope for me. And they don't aim for what they actually truly want and desire because it's like, well, I'm dumb. I'm not very good at this. So because I'm, by the structure, not very good, I'm not even going to aim for a level of betterment because of that. And that there is where the emotions gets lost, where the cup overturns and we end up looking behind us for all the things that we possibly could do, and we end up in the wrong professions. That
Mm.
sense of safety in self, like, actually, I can do anything. If I really truly want to, I can do anything. And that goes for absolutely everyone, because the minute you have a will, the desire is activated. That means that you're looking for any way possible to do the thing that you want to do. So for me, creating art was, I don't have the right products. They're not very good quality. How can I make this work? I'm going to paint over an old one. Nobody wants that anymore. Or I'm going to mix some different types of paints together to get the right thickness so it's not shallow and opaque. And I'll actually grab this because it's still in the works. But
Ooh.
as you can see, like the different types of paint like this, so opaque, covered nicely, like there's no need to really cover the blue as well. But then you go to the orange and it's like, that's got 3 layers of paint on it. And it still does not want to fully cover. Like even this one here, I added a little bit more white into it. And that makes it a little bit more opaque. But that's the quality of the paint. So if the quality of our education is like this paint, how
Mm.
many layers of adaptability do we need to get it to this rich opaqueness, to get
Mm.
it to be a point where we're able to demonstrate what we are actually capable of?
Yeah.
And
Everything's
like
being watered down.
that's not a reflection of my work. That's a
Yeah.
reflection of the materials that I've got available to me, but the will and the desire to continue to move through it. That's what I learn from art and how I teach. I
Yeah.
teach in this way because it's about taking the ugly, taking a proper scribble and making it into something beautiful, because we are all a little bit ugly and beautiful at the same time.
So beautiful. It just made me think about everything being watered down. We hear in the education world, the curriculum's been watered down. And you see in other industries as well, things being fed down, and the quality again isn't there in people's communication, their work ethic, and that watering down again removes the richness of the depth that is possible when we can connect more deeply with people and pull out, like you said, that richness and like what are you capable of? Can you do that to the best of your ability so you do feel of purpose? And in that comes pride in a really beautiful way, you know? And
Mm.
there's again this beautiful dance of the polarities. So, folks, if you've loved listening to our stories, I mean, these are our life stories that we share here. These are the foundational pieces that we tap into in the awareness course. And we've got 3 more days of lives left, and we just really want to share why it's important to us and why it's important for you as well. And if you've loved these little insights that have just made you think and go deeper into yourself, come and join us. Click on the link, type in co-create and you get that beautiful discount. And it's not going to stay that way forever. So why not? Why not take the risk and do something a little bit different and choose you to go deeper into understanding what are your foundations that maybe need resetting so that you can shift and step into that highest version of yourself. And that's what we're here for. So thank you, Flea, for your beautiful
Mhm.
shares, and we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.
Bye, guys.
Bye.